My name again is Kim Garst, and I love helping business owners grow their businesses, online businesses for the most part, although I have worked with brick and mortar businesses as well, leveraging the power of live streaming, digital, and social media. I've had to add live streaming because I do have a Periscope course. So if you're trying to figure out how to make money with Periscope, you can check it out at scopingforbiz.com, guys. I'm also a best-selling author. If you ever want to check out the book, it's called Will the Real You Please Stand Up? You can find it on Amazon. It's all about building an authentic presence. And today I want to talk about maybe too much information. So I'm going to share a story that I've been reluctant to share. But when is too much information too much? So I think it is. Sometimes you should share information that happens in your life simply because sometimes those things can hashtag save a life. And I don't want to be so dramatic as to say that my story is going to save a life, but it might, and or save a biz. So we're going to focus on something that's happened in my personal life recently, not only just recently, but actually over a 3-year period. I want to talk to you guys about, as business owners, and I think that most of us are business owners, we only get one body in this life. We all get one, and we don't get to choose it. We don't get to, decide, what it looks like or any of those things. But the one thing that we can do is we can take care of it. Unfortunately, as business owners, so many times we don't take care of our bodies. Your health, guys, is your number one asset in life and in your business. If you don't feel well, you are not going to do very well in either place, and it doesn't matter how much money you make. If you don't feel well, you are not going to be able to enjoy the money that you make or the time freedom that your business brings your way. So it's important to take care of yourself. And being successful can build poor habits. We get moving, we get rushing, we get overwhelmed, we get, there's so many things that go into building a successful business that we don't slow down lots of times. We don't take care of ourselves. And that has certainly been the case for me. We focus so hard on, the work that we don't take care of our number one and most precious asset, and that's ourselves. It is very stressful on your body. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit again by my story. Yes, I am in Tampa, Florida. And I want to go back to something, guys. I don't know if you saw this. If you caught this on my slide, what I'm getting ready to tell you guys is literally the pot calling the kettle black. This has been a struggle for me. And this goes back years and years of, in my business to where I have been really, really pushing myself. And recently, before we get into, some of the tips that I have for you or some of the things that I have done to really slow myself down and or eliminate stress, I want to share my story with you. About 3 years ago, I was having some health issues, and I went to the doctor, and they said, well, let's do a colonoscopy. And you're like, who? And so I'm like, okay, let's do the colonoscopy. And long story short, they found some polyps. And it was good that I had the issues. Evidently, a lot of times you don't get issues, you don't have issues. In fact, colon cancer is called the silent killer because it doesn't usually produce symptoms, and so lots of times they don't catch it in time. So 3 years ago, like I say, had this issue. They did catch it, and everything was benign, so it wasn't a big issue. But the doctor told me at the time that if they hadn't have caught it, if they had waited until I was 50, for example, for that normal, you're usually 50 before you have to have a colonoscopy, or they recommend that you do a colonoscopy for the first time. But if I had waited until then, I would have probably had stage 4 cancer at that point. So, so the fact that I was having some issues, that I went in and took the time, incidentally though, this is the thing, guys, I lived with those issues for a year before I went to check on it. So take that in for a minute. I lived with something that I knew wasn't right for a year before I went and decided I was going to do something about it. So now it gets even better or worse, whichever way you want to look at it. I went to get a physical a couple of months ago, and the doctor, of course, said, well, you need to go get your colonoscopy again. So finally, 2 months later, I decided, well, let me go I'll do an appointment. So I made an appointment to go get my colonoscopy. I go for the pre-check kind of thing, you know, where they set you down and go through all of your medical stuff. And the lady starts looking at my records, and she's like, well, did you ever go for your 3-month checkup after your last surgery? And I'm like, what do you mean 3-month checkup? And she's like, yeah, you were supposed to have a 3-month checkup. And she starts freaking out because it's been 3 years. And I was, after that particular time that I had that issue, you know, evidently I was supposed to follow up in three months, and I didn't do it. Why? Because business got in the way. Why? Because I wasn't paying attention. And so I got freaked out because she was freaked out. And so again, went in, did my colonoscopy. Thankfully, thank the good Lord, I didn't have any issues, or at least, you know, nothing dramatic. But it was 3 years. I wasn't, again, put it off because it wasn't convenient to my business. So guys, my message to you is, sometimes when you share things that happen in your life, how many of you guys have put things off because you just didn't have time? You know, you just didn't, you know, want to make the time to go take care of something that you know is important, and yet business gets in the way all the time, right? I'm guilty. Like I said, I'm the pot calling the kettle black. I do it all the time. And so my hope in sharing this is that it will inspire somebody to take care of something that they know needs to be done, and or pay attention more specifically to what is happening with your body. So like I said, I lived with something I knew wasn't right for a year before I ever started to take care of it. So if this is a message that you feel somebody out there needs besides you guys, feel free to share this, because I'm getting ready to go over some tips that I think might help not only get you moving around things that are kind of a time suck for us, or they kind of pull us away from the important things that are related to our health. So pay attention to your body. So that's my number one tip, guys. Don't ignore what your body is telling you. So for me, I just ignored it, and, you know, finally said, okay, I'm going to go check this out. And, you know, long story short, I had a huge issue that they were able to fix. But what if they weren't able to fix it? What if by simply waiting, I had, you know, got myself into a real pickle, literally, because I wasn't paying any attention? But let me tell you guys, I have a few other little things that I know are not right. I mean, I have always taken my health for granted because I'm very healthy considering. And, you know, of course I say I'm very healthy. Am I healthy? I'm not on any medications. You know, I don't have, you know, traditional things. I go to the doctor and they're like, okay, what are your medicines? And I'm like, I don't have any. And they're like, what? You know, it's almost unreal today in today's world that at my age, you know, most people are on some sort of medicine of some sort. But I don't have any health issues for the most part. So I've taken my health for granted. But what I have found, and I would love to hear if you feel that this is true for you as well, is I find that if I live with something for a certain amount of time, even though my body says that it's not right, that it becomes an acceptable part of what's happening for me. So like I have this like, and it's from using the computer too much. I have this like ache in my like right shoulder, really knotted up. Okay, I just live with it. I know it's not right, but I live with it. So it becomes an acceptable part of what we live with after a point in time because we just get used to it. It becomes comfortable. We get comfortable with being uncomfortable with our health. Hello, that's not right, right? So stop putting off what your body is telling you, guys. Our bodies are designed mightily and amazingly, and yet we don't take care of them. We actually treat our cars better than we treat ourselves. So don't ignore that. The second thing I want to share with you is be intentional with how you think. For example, we might say to ourselves, I'm really too tired to play with the kids tonight. What I would like to encourage you is to turn that around and say, I'll feel better if I do play with the kids tonight. Have you ever done something that you really dreaded doing and yet you felt so good after you actually did it? Sometimes it's going to visit somebody you haven't been to visit for a long time. Sometimes it's, picking up the phone and calling somebody that you haven't called in a long time or spoken to in a long time. Sometimes it's fixing things that you should have fixed years ago and you just didn't. You kept putting it off. Those are the types of things that you can... once you've done them, you feel so much better about having done them. So it's kind of the same concept of, figure out what it is or turn the things around that you don't want to do or that you don't feel like doing because you just are tired and you're worn out, that will make you feel better. Well, it's similarly to going to the gym. So many times, women in particular, and I've been guilty of this. Well, I can't go to the gym because I don't have those cool workout clothes. Or, I can't go to aerobics because, I look awkward and I don't know the moves. So I can't go. Instead of thinking of it like that, think about it like this. So if to use that same analogy that I just gave or that same story, I can't go because I don't have the cool clothes or I look awkward or like I'm, I've always felt like until I learn the moves, I look super awkward. So instead of that, say to yourself, I look like somebody who is here to make a difference. I'm here to own my number one asset. I am here to make my number one asset bigger and better and focus on that rather than what you look like. What will you look like, if you actually go through the process of pushing through that I don't look good or I look awkward or whatever. So just kick those old excuses to the curb and rearrange them. Rethink them. Be intentional about how you think about the excuses that you give to not do things because we're tired or we don't want to do XYZ. And stop stressing over what you can't control. Oh my goodness, how much energy have we put into crap, honestly, that doesn't amount to a hill of beans. And sometimes it's each and every day. Sometimes we're driving to work and the red light turns right before we get there. We can't control that. And yet we get all bent out of shape because somebody in front of us slams on their brakes when we were going to run that red light. Right? Well, we were going to push the yellow to it a little bit at limits. We wouldn't run a red light. Yellow just means go very fast, right? So, those are types of things that immediately release negative energy into our lives. And that's obviously a small thing, but there's a ton of things that we do and that we stress over each and every day that it doesn't amount to anything. So we can't control what other people do. We can only control how we react to it. You've probably heard that saying so many times in life. So when people stress you out, remember that, don't let negative energy in, just get rid of that. Don't let it fester. Don't let it build. The only thing that we can control is how we react to the circumstances that are presented to us in life. Oh, it's probably been 4 or 5 years ago, and actually more than that, maybe 10. And I was on my way to work, and the dead stop traffic, dead stop. And I'm like, I'm going to be late to work. Oh my gosh, I'm groaning and moaning, and who hasn't done that, right? And then as the traffic started to move and we went by the accident scene, because there was an accident, and there's this gentleman in the road still covered up. And I'm like, every time that happens to me now, every time I'm like stopped in dead stop traffic, I remember that incident, and I realize that my being delayed going wherever it is that I need to go is nothing compared to that person's day or lack thereof. So, put things into perspective, guys. When we are all bent around the bend about things that don't give a flying flip in the big picture of life, put things into perspective and realize that, that's not important. Don't let that stress of, even those little things that all builds on each other, all the little things that happen throughout the course of a day or a week or a year, it builds. And lots of times you can't let stuff like that go. It just continues to circle back. So take charge of what we can control, or taking charge of what we can control gives us the freedom to let go of the things that we can't. And, one quick suggestion I have over on that is make yourself a list. Sit down and take the time. Make a column, things you can control, things you can't control in your business particularly. Because sometimes we get so wrapped up in stuff that really doesn't matter. And I think that will really help weed out all that stress in your life, hopefully, anyway. And then last but not least, guys, step back and take some downtime. I think that sometimes God changes your plan so that you can bless someone else. Amen. Sometimes the best prayers are unanswered prayers. I love that song, and it's so true. So the last thing I wanted to share with you is step back and take that downtime. Downtime doesn't mean go on vacation necessarily, although that can be what it means. But things that downtime can mean pacing yourself. Making a list of things and prioritizing it so that you don't have to get the whole list done today. Those types of things. It can be, and I love this, and I talk about this a lot because it's my number one regret with my own children, is being physically present where you are. So if it's family time, put away the phone, put away the iPad, put away the TV or whatever. If you are playing Legos in the floor, be intentionally where you are in that moment with them. I wish that I had done that. I thought, I was home, I was available, and I can remember, sitting on the floor, literally playing Legos and being on the phone. Kids know, they're smart. They know that you're not physically present with them, even though you're physically present, if that makes sense. So be present where you are. True rest, I think, is another thing. So many times we think we're resting, and we're not resting. So be present where you are. Take rest when true rest is important. And then creative days are a huge thing that I love to talk about. Have your normal work week or your normal work weeks, and then set aside a day, maybe a Friday, or maybe it's every other Friday, where you have that creative time, where you don't do your typical work. You just have a creative day where you can start thinking up amazing new things that you can do in your business. I love power hours. And I do them most every day. Some days I shorten them a little bit, but a power hour is basically a time for you. You know, some people use it for prayer, some people use it for reading or, personal development. Sometimes you can split it into multiple pieces and parts. But whatever that is, wherever you can find an hour, you could, maybe it's a nap. I mean, it could be whatever it is for you, but take that time for you. Power hours are really, really awesome. All right, guys, take care. God bless.